Good evening and welcome to NTD UK News. I'm Stuart Lees and here are today's top stories. Recent data suggests about half of the UK's population may already have COVID-19 antibodies. A landmark report on race relations says the UK is a model for other white majority countries. And in last quarter of 2020, data shows Britain's economy grew faster than previously thought. The latest data from the Office for National Statistics suggests about half of the UK's population may have antibodies against COVID-19. It comes as nearly 4 million vulnerable people will no longer be asked to shield from Thursday. Here's NTD's Jane Wong with more.
Data from the ONS shows that roughly 1 in 2 people have antibodies against COVID-19. It says testing positive for antibodies suggests that people have either had the vaccine or have had the virus in the past. The data says that in the second week of March in England, 54.7% of people in private households are likely to have tested positive for antibodies, along with 50.5% in Wales, 49.3% in Northern Ireland and 42.6% in Scotland. These estimates are for people in private residential households and don't include people in settings such as care homes. The ONS stresses that it's not yet known by how much antibodies need to rise to protect people from COVID-19. There's regional variation in England, with 60% estimated to test positive for antibodies in the northwest, compared with 50.3% in the southeast. More than 30.5 million people in the UK have received the first dose of the vaccine, and more than 3 million have had their second jab. A study from the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention this week suggested that vaccinated people don't carry the virus. Separate data published by the ONS shows that deaths in England and Wales are below the 5-year average. Jane Werrell, NTD News, London.
A landmark report on race relations finds that Britain should be seen as a model for other white majority countries, and that most of the differences it looked at between ethnic groups often do not have their origins in racism.
Last year, Prime Minister Boris Johnson set up the Commission on Race and Ethnic Disparities. The Commission on Wednesday published a report on race relations and equality in the UK. The report says the UK should be regarded as a model for other white majority countries, and that the UK is far more open to minority advancement than 50 years ago. In 2019, the ethnicity pay gap is down to just 2.3%. White Irish, Chinese and Indian ethnic groups are on average earning notably more than the white British average. The report finds in the civil service, law and medicine diversity increased significantly. It found that 9% of senior civil servants, over 20% of lawyers and nearly half of all NHS doctors were from an ethnic minority background in recent years. On education, the report says new evidence indicates that attainment is closely related to socio-economic status. Children from ethnic communities did as well or better than white pupils in compulsory education. Black Caribbean pupils were the only group to perform less well. As for health, the report says, for many key health outcomes, including life expectancy, ethnic minorities groups have better outcomes than the white population. However, the Commission also makes clear that the UK is not a post-racial society. But another important finding is that most of the disparities that are attributed to racial discrimination often do not have their origins in racism. The report says some ethnic groups continue to be haunted by historic cases of racism and mistrust the system.
From today, Germany is restricting the use of Astrazeneca's COVID-19 vaccine to people aged 60 and over and other high-priority groups. Chancellor Angela Merkel announced the decision on Tuesday. She says that everything around vaccination is based on one principle, and that is trust. The move follows the Independent Vaccine Committee's recommendation and comes in response to new reports of rare brain blood clots. Germany has had 31 cases of thrombosis following a shot with the Astrazeneca vaccine, none of them fatal, and nearly all involving women. The decision could be a severe setback for Germany's vaccination campaign. The European Medicines Agency this month said the benefits of the jabs still outweighed the risks.
Preventing COVID-19.
And in other news, Britain's last quarter of 2020 was better than previously thought. But the year as a whole still saw the biggest economic contraction in more than 3 centuries. NTD's Patrick Hayden has the details.
New data for last year shows that the UK's battered economy grew more than previously thought. Gross domestic product rose by 1.3% for the last 3 months of the year from the previous quarter. Early estimates from the Office of National Statistics predicted just a 1% growth. At the same time, year-on-year GDP fell 9.8% from 2019, biggest contraction in more than 3 centuries. And data shows households are sitting on a big pile of savings. Savings ratios for the year hit a record high of 16.3%, compared with a 6.8% in 2019. The Bank of England thinks this will fuel a jump in spending as the government lifts restrictions on the economy between now and late June. Patrick Hayden, NTD News, London.
According to a study, people in Scotland get 30% more public funding per person than people in England.
The Institute for Fiscal Studies, or IFS, finds the Scottish Government now has over £1.30 per person to spend on public services for every £1 of comparable spending per person in England. The report says almost all of this gap in funding is caused by relatively high levels of funding from the UK Government via the Barnett formula. Net revenues from the Scottish Government's devolved taxes, on the other hand, make only a marginal contribution. The report finds the Scottish National Party administration plans to use some of its temporary funding boost from the UK Government to fund permanent policies irrelevant to the pandemic. For example, Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon promised free school meals for primary pupils, a free bus pass for young Scots, and at least a 4% pay rise to NHS staff. These policies are central to the SNP's re-election campaign. The report warns although the Scottish Government will receive more funding to tackle the pandemic, the money for these policies is likely to come from its own core funding. That means the next Holyrood administration will have to consider tax increases or cuts to some services. The report says the Scottish Government received £9.5 billion in funding to tackle the pandemic and will receive a further £3.3 billion in the next year.
The BBC's China correspondent is now in Taiwan. John Sudworth left China after he faced threats and pressure from the Chinese regime.
The BBC said on Wednesday its Beijing correspondent had relocated to Taiwan amid pressure from the Chinese regime. John Sudworth was known for his reporting on the treatment of the Uyghur people. He said he had been under surveillance, faced threats of legal action, obstruction and intimidation. China's foreign ministry on Wednesday said it had never threatened him, but it strongly condemned the BBC's reporting on Xinjiang, COVID-19 and Hong Kong. Sudworth said on his way to the airport, plainclothes police officers followed him and his family all the way into the check-in area. The BBC says Sudworth, who was based in China for 9 years, will remain its China correspondent.
They are a familiar bane for UK drivers, cyclists and pedestrians alike. Potholes. The government proposed to spend £500 million a year to help councils fix the problem. NTD's L Rhodes fills us in.
A new report found that England's roads get resurfaced only every 83 years. And according to experts, irregular repairs compound the problem of potholes developing. To tackle the issue, the government promised £500 million in funding for councils. Nicholas Lyes, head of roads policy at the RAC, says, without a long-term approach to local road maintenance funding, similar to what we have already for strategic roads, we face our roads remaining in a perpetually poor state. We asked one local resident about the issue.
The potholes are a nuisance and they're dangerous, especially not just for cars, for people, as in i.e. ladies with pushchairs or people in wheelchairs. Let's forget about them, because they've got a problem as well, and it's a hazard.
When told about the funding, he said,
Well, I didn't know that, but I assume a lot of the money comes from normal people that's driving their cars, paying tax. So that'd be good news for them, providing they do it.
His local council, Hounslow, has pledged to invest £2 million to fix potholes. Earl Rhodes, NTD News, London.
Soon, we might have to scan our faces before entering a pub. The idea comes as the government is debating over vaccine passports. NTD's Patrick Hayden reports.
The UK government is considering using facial recognition technology to enter pubs and other venues. But UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson recently said it's too early to decide whether vaccine certificates will be used for pub entry.
There are complexities, moral complexities, ethical problems that need to be addressed, and we'll be saying more about it.
UK vaccine passports will use facial recognition to see if someone has either been vaccinated, recently been tested, or has developed immunity to the CCP virus. He does admit, though, that there are ethical problems that need to be addressed.
The libertarian in me is also trying to protect people's fundamental right to life and their ability to live their lives normally, and the only way really to restore that for everybody is for us to beat the disease.
The Times reports the facial recognition software has already been rolled out to the National Health Service app, which is separate from the government's contact tracing app. Users can access their health records, including test results and vaccinations, with it. iProve's CEO Andrew Budd says that without some technical assistance to help pubs screen pub goers, it just won't happen. Patrick Hayden, NTD News, London.
Coming up, the World Health Organization published its report on the origin of the virus. The UK, the US, and several other countries are concerned about its transparency. That and more when we return.